Hi and welcome back. So now that you're getting a better handle on layer masks and what they do and how to use them, let's do another assignment. So what we're going to do in this project is we have this image of a mountain biker jumping, and we're going to first add a layer that puts some blur in the background. And if I toggle back and forth between this, see how this area and a little bit of the foreground blurs, leaving just the ramp and the area underneath the biker nice and sharp and crisp. I'll toggle that again so you can see it. Okay, so first we're going to add that blur using a layer mask to mask out the biker and the ramp. And then we're going to add a black and white layer for the background, masking out just the biker. Okay, so I'll toggle that one back and forth a couple times. Okay, so that's what this assignment is going to be. You can follow along or you can watch through and then try it on your own at the end. I'll have this image available in the course downloads with this lecture. And I'm going to jump over into this one. This is just the original, so we can start and build this up from scratch. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is make a selection. And I'm not going to go through this whole selection in this lecture. I'll just kind of fast forward, but I'll get started. We're going to use the quick select tools. We're going to hit the W, and I'm just going to start selecting our mountain biker. And you can see I can just work through this, work around the wheels, the tires, all through this. And then I will use the space bar and hand tool to scroll down to this, and I will select all through here, working back and forth using my Alt key or Option key on a Mac to subtract spaces. We've done this before, so you know how to do this. But basically what I'm trying to do is just select this ramp, select part of this area. Scroll back out, select this outcrop here because you don't want that to be blurry, and then select around here. And because this will take a little bit of time to do the selections on this body, I'm not going to do all the detail. I'm going to use a preloaded selection. And I'll include this in the file for you, but I would encourage you to do the selection on your own, but I'm just going to preload a selection so that doesn't take us forever. So I'm going to hit Control D to deselect everything. I'm going to go to my select drop down and say load selection. Make sure I'm in the correct document, layer masks, mountain biking, and then this one, final bike and jump, is the one that I want. Select that, click OK, and now we have a selection of the bike and the landing pad. And you can see this isn't perfect. We're going to go in and we're just going to soften these edges in the layer mask itself, and I'll show you that in just a second. But we make sure we're selected on our background. Oh, first I want to make a copy of this background, so I'll copy that, and then make sure you're selected on the copy. Make sure you have your selection active, and then go and click on a layer mask, and we create a layer mask. Now currently we basically have the background selected, so that's what's going to be masked off. We actually want to be masking off the bike and the ramp, so we need to do what? Control or Command I to invert it. There we go. And then we'll go in and modify this just a little bit to smooth it. And to make that even easier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the blur on first, and then you can modify it, and you'll see the results immediately as you change the mask. So we'll click on the image, and we're going to go up to filter. And I don't think I've shown you this before, so this is something new for you, but it's just a filter. You can do all kinds of things to your images using filters, but if you go to blur, a Gaussian blur is just a way to blur an image. So we click on Gaussian blur, and it asks you how much blur do you want, and you can see it's got a preview down here. So you see how The ramp is really crisp and this is really crisp, but all this other stuff is very blurry in the background, especially through here. So you can see in the preview that if I ramp this up, it's going to get super blurry, and see how this transition looks really unnatural. And frankly, you just wouldn't want it that blurry. You can see the sky is all distorted. So we wouldn't want it that blurry. And I had it set on 2.5, and that's just about right. So go for 2.5. You could go a little more subtle, like 2 if you wanted, but we'll go for a little more drama here. So set it on 2.5, click OK, and we have now blurred this image. But since we have the biker and that masked off, they are not blurred. They're still staying crisp. If we deleted this mask, then they would also be blurred because of the effect on this image. But now we're going to go in and modify the mask a little bit so that the mask doesn't have these weird edges, because you see where the blur, it has a like distinct edge. It's okay right here because that's a sharp edge, so it's okay to have the blur behind that. But maybe right here where there's some grass that's probably in the foreground, not in the background, and then along here we need to just blur it. So first thing we need to do to edit our mask, if you remember, we can use our brush tool. So we hit the B key and we get into our brush tool, and then remember to add mask, we use the black. So we're already in black, so let's add a little mask. Oh, and you want to set your opacity at something light, like 10% or 12%. If I hit the 1 key, that'll set that at 10%. Also make sure you have a very soft brush, and then you can just go in along these edges and soften this a little bit. We're just adding to the mask, so we're excluding a little bit more of this surface or image from being blurred. You can make your tool smaller. And since I'm only on 12% or 10%, you have to go over it quite a few times to get it to sharpen up. You can ramp it up. You can go back and forth with your opacity, but you'll notice on my layer mask, see how these areas are starting to turn gray? Because I'm basically adding to the mask. So I'm going to go along this edge just so it's not quite so distinct or kind of weird looking. There we go. Maybe I'll add a tiny bit of detail in there. Something like that. And you can also go the other way. You can hit your X key and you can actually blur some of this stuff to make this distinct. So if I blur some of this and a little bit of this, see, I'm just evening out the layer mask a little bit. And you can see the layer mask doesn't have to be perfect, because with a blur it's blurry. So you just have to have it so the transitions aren't really weird and obvious. But we can go, let's go hit the X key and add some layer mask here so we kind of crisp that up a little bit. And that's pretty good. Maybe one more here. It's all about kind of making smooth transitions. Oh, one thing I will note though, I'm going to double click on this so you can see the selection here. So on this, for the blur, I did actually select everything inside the wheel. The reason is the spokes will blur if you don't have, so the whole area is selected. You notice I didn't go select individual spokes, but I selected the whole area, because going back here, and I'm going to zoom in here, if I had this inside area not selected and masked, then when I did the Gaussian blur, it would blur out all of these, let me make this a pointer, it would blur out all of these spokes. Okay, so by selecting the entire inside area of the wheel, I prevented it from getting blurred out. Okay, so that's that. Okay, now we're going to put a black and white adjustment layer on here, and we basically just click on this layer, and then you can go down here to adjustment layers, or you can go here to adjustments, and this is the black and white. Click on that, and it creates a new adjustment layer, and it's making it black and white. Oh, except I forgot to load my selection first. So let's delete that black and white layer, grab it and delete it, And then I'm going to load my selection or make my selection just of the bike because that's what I want to keep in color. So I'm going to go select, load selection, and I have to take it from the PSD one and just the mountain bike, and OK. Okay, there it's loaded, and you notice now, if I scroll in, now the spokes are not selected because I don't want this, I want this sky in the background to go black and white so it doesn't have like some purple or pink while this is black and white. I'm going to hit Control 0 to make it full screen. And then now that we have that selected, I can add my adjustment layer. So I go to Adjustments, click on black and white. Now it's masked off the selection, and this is actually the inverse, which could be cool in and of itself if you just wanted to have a effect like that. But our goal here is to make the biker color. So we're going to make sure we're selected on the layer mask right here. Hit Control I, Command I on a Mac to inverse the layer mask. So basically we're just masking off our biker. And then we have our final. So we've got the layer mask here to prevent this from blurring. We have the layer mask here also to prevent this from blurring, but then we have another layer mask to prevent this from being changed to black and white in our adjustment layer. And that's your finished piece. So I encourage you to go get this image, try to do the selections, but like I say, I'll include the PSD file which has the selections loaded in there. Make your selections, make your masks based on your selections, invert them, doing Control I, use your brush to clean that up a little bit or soften up your transitions. Create a new selection of your biker, create a black and white adjustment layer from that, invert it with Control or Command I, and you're finished. Please post that in the Q&As. I would love to see it. We're getting into a little bit more challenging stuff. So, we've got several layers and layer masks and selections and things in here. So this is where it's a really good chance for you to practice and show me your stuff. And I can help you to get better and better at Photoshop. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.